Drew and Few have gift-wrapped an opening night bundle of joy for all of us. A top 10 matchup to kick off the season.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? Welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, the only daily national college hoop show out there. We're your hosts. This lovely gentleman to my side is Mr. Andy Patton, and I'm Isaac Shade, and you're joining us at the place to get your college basketball content every single day. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch. I want to remind you that you can get every episode ad-free on our good friends at Amazon Music. Special shout out also to all the everydayers joining us and all the members of the Locked On College Basketball Discord. Welcome in, folks. We're glad you're here. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Going to be a fun Monday show today. A big reason it's fun is because my friend... It's your birthday. Andy Patton is 34 years young today, folks. Make sure you reach out to him on Twitter or wherever and shoot him some birthday love. Andy, I hope you eat a beautiful day with a nice red glass of wine or something awesome and enjoy that. Man, going to be good. So happy for you and glad another year of your life. Way to go, Ma and Pa Patton. Coming up on the show today, folks, as I said off the top, Baylor and Gonzaga are indeed kicking off the season for us. We love these coaches. We love how they love each other. And boy, have they hooked us all up. So we'll unpack the game and what it means for college basketball on opening night. Plus, the Big Ten schedule came out late last week. Looks like they're trying to take over the entire calendar year 2025. Plus, what's everything look like in this conference schedule now that we have the 4 West Coast teams? We're going to unpack all of that for you. So, Andy, why don't you kick us off, get us into the news and the details about this great, probable, we don't have the preseason poll yet, top 10 matchup between the Baylor Bears and the Gonzaga Bulldogs.
Well, I'll tell you what, first of all, if it's not a top 10 matchup, then the pollsters are definitely off about somebody here, right? Because I don't know these are both top 5 teams necessarily, but I think there's an argument that they're both top 5 teams, and it would be very surprising if they weren't both top 10 teams. But yeah, it was great to see this game come together. We'd heard rumors about it for a really long time. We'd heard rumors that they were trying to play the first week of the season, but we didn't know the exact date. We'd heard rumors that the game was going to be in Las Vegas as a neutral site, which felt kind of very normal for both these teams. We've seen them play neutral site games in the past. We saw them play at the Sanford Pentagon a few years ago. So it's pretty not surprising to see these two teams square off against each other again. Like you said, Mark Few, Scott Drew are friends. They've played against each other for a long time. That this is they've had shared a lot of assistant coaches and staff members. So it's not surprising to see these two teams link up again. And we'd actually heard for a while the rumor that this game was going to be on November 6th, the first Wednesday of the season, and that it was going to be played in Mexico City. I'd spoken on Locked On Zags with Rocco Miller about this, and that was the rumor. They were trying to make that happen. We know the Big 12 has been interested in trying to kind of create more of a market in Mexico City. So Baylor wanting to play down there, Gonzaga being willing to play them, it all kind of made sense. But unfortunately, things fell apart in that conversation. They weren't able to get it done. I think finding a venue in Las Vegas at that short notice was something that they weren't able to get together. So they decided to play this game at the Spokane Arena on November 4th, the first day of the season. Isaac, you and I have talked so many times about the lack of marquee games on the first day of the season. We're so happy to finally see that happen. I think the first episode you and I ever did together was on opening day 2 years ago. And that was the first segment of the first episode of Locked On College Basketball. If you have been a listener since day one, you've heard this conversation before. We've talked about it. And so it's so nice to not be able to need to have that conversation for another year. This is going to be a fantastic matchup between, again, two potential likely top 10 teams squaring off on the first day of the season.
And it's great because this year, not only that, but we have another matchup that's probably top 25, if not, top 30, 35, whatever. As you said, the polls, who knows what happens. But we get Texas, Ohio State actually in Las Vegas at T-Mobile Arena, maybe part of the reason that our Gonzaga Baylor game's not there. But there's some other decent games as well. Texas A&M, a true road game at UCF, South Florida against Florida. That would have probably been a better game last year, but still we get a couple of Andy that are going to be exciting. Now, Andy, as we start to dig into the minutia of this game, the TV side of it's kind of weird because of the way that media agreements are played out. I saw your eyebrows there as I said the we. ESPN has first right of refusal because this is a game in a state played by a WCC member.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? This is on a Monday night, and that interferes with Monday Night Football. And oh, by the way, it just so happens to be the Bucks at the two-time back-to-back national champions and Patrick Mahomes and the world's most famous girlfriend in Swift. So obviously, it's not going to be on ESPN.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, oh, how about ESPN2? Well, guess what? I looked at the Manning cast schedule. Of course, they're going to have a Manning cast again for the Bucks at the Chiefs and Taylor Swift and all of that. So that's a no-go as well. So Andy, I started trying to think what are the options for the TV here? Maybe ESPNU, but that just feels like a weird relegation to me for that. I mean, I guess if you got to do it, you got to do it. I also thought about the possibility of after Monday Night Football is over. Again, this is in Pacific time, so you could go on ESPN, but oops, you got SVP, and of course, that's bad beats on Monday night. We can't be going without that, so maybe it's on ESPN2 post Monday Night Football. Or a third option I had thought about, it's just that ESPN has first right of refusal, so maybe they refuse and it ultimately goes to another network. Those are the three I've thought about, and so Andy, I don't know. I'll be interested to see what happens there with TV side of it.
Yeah, me too. It's one of those things that it's frustrating that the season starts competing with Monday Night Football. Like we've had 2 years worth of complaints about there not being any marquee games, and now when we finally get marquee matchups, they're having to compete. Like because again, is the best case scenario for Gonzaga Baylor that this game ends up on CBS or some other network competing against Monday Night Football? That doesn't seem like a good scenario in terms of generating the kind of viewership that you want to get there. But then again, so is putting this game on ESPN2 with an 8:30 p.m. Pacific time tip, where Baylor fans are forced to watch this thing. Baylor fans in Waco can't. They got to stay up till 10:30 to watch the start of this game. Like that doesn't
on a
feel,
school night on election
feel like a good option either. And obviously, moving it to Tuesday is not a good option. That's election day. That's not a good day to have any basketball games going on. But it kind of speaks to a larger issue of why is college basketball so insistent on starting the season on a Monday? It's not like Monday's a big day in college basketball throughout the regular season. Monday's one of the slowest days typically. You get Big Monday starting in December or starting in January, but I don't see why the season is. I get why they're not starting on a Sunday or a Saturday. They don't want to compete with college football or the NFL, but just go Tuesday. Just start on a Tuesday, and then an election year start on a Wednesday. Like it seems like there's no real reason to force this season to start on a Monday, because then you have situations like this where late in the offseason, a really fun marquee matchup shows up in ESPN. Now they got some hand wringing going on to figure out how the heck are we going to make this work? Are we going to force these two teams to start super late? Maybe that's why they agreed to play it at the arena. Maybe that's part of the deal there, is playing it in Spokane on the West Coast makes it a little bit more palatable to play a game starting super late. That's kind of my best guess, is they're playing the game there in part in order to be able to have the game on ESPN starting at like 8:30. But if that's the best case
8:30 Pacific, just to specify.
If that's the best that they can do to get this game, then that's not great. That's not great from a TV perspective.
Also, speaking of the location, Andy, we always chuckle about these kind of things. This being at Spokane Arena, similar to like Kentucky coming to play, in Spokane. Jeff Goodman tweeted about this and said, quote, "Drew will play a true road game. Come on the first day of the season against a preseason top 10 team." End quote. Andy, I literally put in our show notes a facepalm emoji. This is not a true road game. This is not at the Kennel. And I understand, it makes sense to not, unless we're going to have a couple of true things. Plus, Andy, while you and I talk about all the time, we would prefer to have these games on campus. What this is going to allow in this day and age is NIL opportunities for these teams. And look, that frankly is a new wrinkle in these types of events. And so I think, while we love these on-campus games, I do think that we want to continue to think of player empowerment and capability to make these dollars. And so I'm becoming more sympathetic to these games in the NIL era. Speaking of these games, Andy, the good news is that it sounds like, also from Goodman's reporting on the positive side of it, that the two have agreed to play each other each of the next 2 seasons as well at neutral sites. So, Andy, I'm thinking maybe that one of those would be closer to Waco, since this is close to, or is literally in Spokane, and that the other would probably be a true neutral somewhere.
Yeah, it's going to be, you're going to have one game in Spokane, you're going to have one game in probably Dallas, and you're going to have one game in an actual neutral site. I'm wondering if they're going to try to do Mexico City again, or if they're going to settle on Vegas. Maybe they'll go back to the Sanford Pentagon. I'm not sure what exactly they're going to look to do there. But again, the trust these two coaches have to be like, okay, our original plan for this game didn't work. So Scott Drew says, fine, I'm willing to go play you in Spokane because I know that, we'll get a game closer to our home in a couple of years. And that's what that kind of bugged me about Goodman's tweet, is like, he's trying to compliment Scott Drew, and Scott Drew deserves to be complimented for this. He's willing to go play a pseudo road game on the first day of the season. That should be complimented, but you don't have to call it a road game when it's not. You don't have to specify true road game when that's not what it is. Like, that's, you don't have to use incorrect language to emphasize your point. It's just not necessary. No. This is a phenomenal thing that Scott Drew and Baylor is willing to do, to go play a really good team with a ton of roster continuity on the first day of the season when you have 3 or maybe 4 new starters. Scott Drew deserves a lot of love for that. Doesn't make it a true road game.
No,
doesn't make it a true road game. And I don't like that is the way that is being sold, because that's not the case.
Well, hopefully the other 2 iterations of this will also kick off the season, Andy. That'd be great. Yeah. And the Pentagon, was that where it was supposed to be the year that it got COVIDed, like day of?
Yeah. And then, they ended up playing there the following year. So they have played there before, but yeah, it was supposed to be the year before that. We're going to transition away from talking about Scott Drew, Mark Few in the first day of the season to talk about the Big Ten, because their schedule is finally out. We've been talking about how long it has been taking these teams or these conferences to put together their full conference schedules and reveal them. The Big Ten schedule, it was out on Thursday. It appears the conference is trying to take over the first couple of months of the year 2025. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. But first, folks, let's talk about today's sponsor, FanDuel. NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. If you're thinking 2025 national championship, those 2 teams, Baylor and Gonzaga, both right now have tied for the 4th best odds to win that national championship, plus 2,000 right now. So if that appeals to you, go ahead, drop that $5. You get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's at FanDuel.com. All right, Isaac, moving away from our conversation about the opening day of the season and that epic Gonzaga-Baylor matchup to talk about the Big Ten. Because on Thursday, we finally got the actual matchups that we're going to see and the dates for the Big Ten conference schedule. We already knew the matchups. Now we have the dates. It's a 20-game schedule. Each team will play 3 teams at home and away. Each team will then play 7 teams just on the road and 7 teams at home. That's how it's working with the Big Ten. Again, we're going to get tip times. We're going to get TV deals. All that stuff's going to show up later. Part of the reason that this schedule looks a little bit different is, of course, because the Big Ten added 4 new schools for the 24-25 season, the 4 West Coast schools in Washington and Oregon, as well as your Southern California schools in UCLA and USC. The first games of the Big Ten conference slate will be on December 3rd. Again, as we've seen with a couple other conferences, particularly these extra bloated conferences, you see some early conference games, and then usually they play a few more non-conference games, and then you get back into the actual full conference slate starting usually the very end of December or the start of the new year. The first games that we're going to see on that Tuesday, December 3rd, Northwestern at Iowa, Washington at UCLA, and then Michigan at Wisconsin. So we're going to see a bunch of games, 18 total games between December 3rd and December 13th. So we actually are seeing a pretty good amount of Big Ten scheduling starting kind of earlier in the season. Every team is going to play 2 times in that span, once at home and once on the road. So a lot of different Big Ten action taking place a little bit earlier this year. But Isaac, I want to kind of talk about not the December portion of the schedule, but what happens when we get into January? Because you made a really keen observation when putting together some of the notes for the Big Ten schedule of they want to make sure they're visible every single day that they can be once the basketball season gets fully underway.
Andy, this was so crazy. Here I was this weekend just sitting looking through the schedule a little more in depth. And I was like, well, that's interesting. There's a game on January 2nd and 3rd and 4th, 5th, 6th. So, holy smokes. And we know like the Big Ten has been the conference that's played on more days of the week, right? Like for a while now, we've been getting a Friday night matchup every now and again, which I love. Like college basketball should own Friday night. We get more Sunday matchups in the Big Ten and things like that. But now the Big Ten's going all in, Andy. And so what I realized is that from New Year's Day through the last day of the regular season, which is Sunday, March 9th, there are only 4 calendar days in that span with no Big Ten games. That's New Year's Day. The main chunk of the conference schedule starts on Thursday, January 2nd, and then 3 straight Mondays, February 3rd, 10th, and 17th. Other than those 4 days, we will have at least one 10 basketball game every other day. That is absolutely insane. So that means like Tuesday, February 18th through Sunday, March 9th, there's one game every day. Thursday, January 2nd through Sunday, February 2nd, there is at least one Big Ten game every single day. Andy, that's crazy. My hunch is that a lot of it has to do with accommodating the travel schedules of getting teams from West to East Coast, but I'm fine with that because it means we get great conference basketball every day of the week. You know, you had been talking about how bereft of games we typically are on a Monday. Not necessarily so, because that Big Monday is always one Big 12 and one ACC game, usually flip-flopped that order, but now we're going to get some Big Ten as well. The issue, though, Andy, is one con in this for me as I started looking at it, Purdue, right, which last couple of years has been the taste of the town when it comes to the Big Ten, only has 2 Saturday games in their schedule. I don't love that because Saturday is like marquee college basketball. And so that is one of the drawbacks is that it's spreading out the days when these teams compete. But all in all, I think I really like this.
Yeah, me too. I think it's fun to be able to have, for the Big Ten, you're continuing to make sure that there's eyes on your games every single day of the week. Basically, people who are like, oh, what am I going to do on Wednesday? There's no and my NBA team's not playing, whatever it may be, like you're going to have some kind of game to watch. You're going to have some, maybe it's Northwestern at Rutgers. I know Rutgers is kind of good this year, but like maybe it's not the most exciting matchup that you would typically get, but like there's going to be some kind of Big Ten basketball basically every single day from January to early March. And that's objectively a good thing. Yes. Do you wish Purdue got more marquee games? Perhaps. But again, the Big Ten they have to kind of guess a little bit in terms of which games they think are going to be more viewed than others and try to put them in the right spots while also accommodating, the travel schedules, especially with the West Coast trips. And I think that's the most intriguing part of this new schedule for the Big Ten is how they're trying to handle the fact that you have 4 schools very separate from the rest of the teams in the conference. There's not really travel partners in the way that we traditionally think of travel partners, but we do see that like when USC travels out, they're going to try to hit 2 games in the same trip. They're going to Northwestern on February 4th and they're going to Purdue on February 7th, for example. Other examples would be like Oregon's going to Michigan on February 5th and Michigan State on February 8th. Like those are the obvious types of scheduling things that just make sense. Like why there's no reason to not do this in a way that is as convenient for Oregon as possible. And then of course, the same thing with the East Coast or the non-West Coast teams, I guess, going out West, like Iowa goes to USC on the 14th of January, and then they go to UCLA on the 17th. Wisconsin goes to USC on the 18th. They go to UCLA on the 21st, et cetera, et cetera. You look through the schedule, you're going to continue to see that the majority of the trips are like that. And they're not forcing all of the Big Ten teams to go to all 4 West Coast schools. In fact, none of the original Big Ten schools are making a trip to California and a trip to Oregon and Washington. None of them also get all 4 of them at home. It's all split up. And I think that is probably the most logical way to do it. And assuming the Big Ten stays at 18 schools, it's probably going to continue to be that way. So an example would be a team is either going to get Washington and Oregon at home and go to USC and UCLA, or the flip side. They're going to go to Washington and Oregon, and they're going to play USC and UCLA at home. In order to make that work, all of the the new schools, the 4 West Coast schools, their home and away games, because remember, every Big Ten school gets 3 opponents that are both home and away. For the new schools, it's just each other. UCLA plays USC at home and away. Oregon plays Washington at home and away, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that makes sense. But my curiosity, and we talked about this right before we hit record, Isaac, was if that's going to continue to be the plan, because it makes sense in year one as these teams kind of get used to what this travel looks like and kind of just see how it goes. But what if 5 years from now or 10 years from now or whatever, there's a reality, and this has been a reality for many of the last a couple of decades, where UCLA is really good and USC is not, and Oregon is not, and Washington is not. And then UCLA is getting a schedule where they get 6 of their Big Ten games are against 3 teams that aren't very good. If I'm Indiana or Purdue or whatever, I'm not super happy that UCLA just routinely gets a schedule that ends up easier. Obviously, the flip side could be true. All 4 of those teams are, 4 of the 7 best teams in the Big Ten, and then all of a sudden they're not going to be super happy that they're playing each other. So that's just something I'm curious about. Obviously, we don't know if the Big Ten plans to continue doing it this way. It makes sense logistically, but it might not make sense from a competitive perspective. And I'm curious kind of when the rubber hits the road in that regard.
Like, for example, Andy, the ACC, you keep 2 of those. They do the same thing with three teams that you play home and away in a 20-game schedule with, I mean, it's the exact same as the Big Ten, but 2 of those partners are always the same, and 1 is variable year in, year out. And so, I'm very curious to see what happens with that. But I'm right with you. I think that for now, in year 1 of this is the most notable way to approach it, both from like a travel standpoint and all that. And the weird thing, of course, about it is literally the landscape of this entire thing could be different next season or 2 seasons from now. And so it's just really hard to know with what we're going to be looking at. But I think the Big Ten has done, as a conference, has scheduled this in a really smart way. You're talking about you can basically plan on having it any night of the week. So while you were talking, I was like, man, I wonder what I'm going to do on Valentine's Day. So I looked, Valentine's is a Friday night. We got UCLA at Indiana on Friday night, Valentine's Day. Look, I'm all in. Let's do it.
Anybody more romantic out there than Mick Cronin?
No.
Heck no.
That man is so sexy, Andy. Let's get after it. Okay. Now, we want to continue talking about the Big Ten, but look specifically at some of the games. Can Indiana, the Hoosiers, show Purdue that they are not only the class of the Big Ten, but maybe the state of Indiana finally? Move over, Sycamores. We're coming for you. And how's Rutgers going to look in early conference action with their 2 stud freshmen? We're going to discuss these matchups and more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Game Time. Look, going to live events, it really is absolutely the best. Music, theater, comedy, and finally, obviously, college football is back. But 6 weeks from today, we will have college basketball. And obviously, Andy and I know you, are looking forward to making brand new memories this college basketball season. Well, great news. When you're getting tickets for this year, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. That makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to keep wading through all the muck. So whether it's Game Time ticket coverage, the lowest price guarantee, or the panoramic views from your seat that you can find in the app, Game Time has got you covered. And honestly, you don't even have to wait 6 weeks, because Purdue is going to Creighton for a charity exhibition on October 26th. That's just over a month from now at the CHI Health Center in Omaha there. You can get, Andy, row 4 just behind the Creighton bench for $38 each. That's incredible. Or if you don't want to spend quite that much, you can get in the door for $19. That's the cheapest ticket I found. Great stuff. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. That means they have to pay you $1, I think, Andy, to go if you get that $19 ticket. No, that's not how that works. I'm joking. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. Andy, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, we've had the conference pairings for a while. It's just very nice to now know what order they're in and where they are and day and all of that kind of stuff. Andy, I'll start and then I'll kick it to you with one that really jumped out at me. Indiana has not been all that great lately. In fact,
Mhm.
they have not owned the state that has the same name as their mascot, the Hoosiers. It's time for them to step up and start taking that back. Also, Mike Woodson would appreciate that so that his job stays intact. And they're going to have two opportunities to do that with the other Big Ten team in their state. IU at Purdue in Mackey on January 31st. And then Purdue comes to Bloomington on February 23rd. Spread out just a little bit. I kind of like that. So if Indiana really wants to prove, hey, look, not only can we get back on top of our state, but also the Big Ten in the post-Zach Edey era, it's got to do it in these two games. They must hold serve, particularly at home. But man, if they want to really make waves, both at the conference level and nationally, doing that at Mackey on January 31st would be massive for Mike Woodson's retooled club, who brought in a lot in the transfer portal, Andy. So I'm going to be watching both of those games keenly.
Yeah, I think it's a nice advantage for Indiana to play Purdue as late in the season as they are, just because they're a roster that has so much newcomers, so many, multiple new transfers who are expected to start. I think probably at least for sure 3 new starters this year. So not getting Purdue until basically February with that January 31st game, I think is a nice, I'd be happy to see that if I was Mike Woodson. And if I'm Matt Painter in Purdue, this is a pretty tough schedule for them. I think, you're talking about a road trip in January that's really pretty brutal. They're going coast to coast, and just over a week span, they go on the road to take on Rutgers on January 9th. They come back home to play Nebraska on the 12th, just 3 days later. And then 3 days after that, they're going all the way out to Seattle to play Washington on the 15th of January. And then 3 days later, again, they're playing Oregon down in Eugene on the 18th. So they're going to be at Rutgers on the 9th and at Oregon on the 18th with 2 games in the middle. That is a really tough stretch, going to kind of really test the mettle for this Purdue team. Again, Matt Painter's clubs are always tough. They're always tenacious. This is a roster that has a ton of continuity despite losing a key player, of course, in Zach Edey. I think this is a team that's going to be very, very good with their guards, Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer. So I'm excited to see how this team looks, and this particular stretch here in January is going to really give us a lot of information about the Boilermakers and how ready they are to once again be a significant player in the Big Ten and in the NCAA tournament.
Andy, something I'm looking at is that Eric Musselman is breathing a sigh of relief about the travel at the end of the schedule. Yeah. I feel like if I was one of the West Coast foursome, I wish we could brand like the West Coast.
I know, we need a name for them.
Yeah, we should really come up with that.
Big Ten West, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be fun. We're folks, help us brand this. Give us your best nicknames for the West Coast quartet of the Big Ten. Anyway, I would really want my travel or my stay home in chunks. And so what's really interesting for me is I was looking at USC's schedule is they actually close with a 3-game stretch against the other 3 West Coast teams. They go to Oregon on March 1st, host Washington on March 5th, and then go to UCLA just down the road on March 8th to kind of close out their regular season. And so I feel like you're looking at that and you're like, man, we're those first 17 games, and obviously they've got 3 other games against this trio because they're all playing each other home and away. But that means then that your travel's all mixed together, but really you're just staying West Coast at the end of the season. And I think that's not something you really like talk to your team about, like, hey guys, it's going to be great in these last 3 games. But I think as a coaching staff, it's like, ooh, that's a nice way to end.
Yeah, you're feeling the strain of traveling so much throughout the year. So knowing that you got that not nearly as long of a trip up to Oregon, and then obviously a much shorter trip to UCLA to close out the year. And again, same kind of thing with that we were talking about with Indiana, USC. I mean, a completely new roster. So I'm not thrilled if I'm Oregon or UCLA that I'm playing what is likely a USC team that is a little bit more rested towards the end of the year because they're not traveling as much in those last few games, and a team that's probably gelled a lot more now than they will have, in January or December when the first Big Ten game starts. So that's a bit of an advantage for USC, and maybe not a great thing for Oregon and UCLA, who I think are going to be contending towards the top of the conference. Another game that I really wanted to highlight here is Rutgers at Ohio State. This game is on December 7th, one of the first conference games in the entire Big Ten, certainly for these teams. And it's really going to be a good opportunity to figure out what the heck the Scarlet Knights have here in these 2 superstar freshmen, Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. We expect Ohio State to be a good team, as we talked about at the top. We think this is a potential top 25 team for the Buckeyes, with new coach Jake Diebler taking over for Chris Holtmann. And so I think if this is a top 25 team by the time this game rolls around, Rutgers, assuming they do okay in their non-conference, is also going to be a top 25 team. So this is a really good opportunity. The first Big Ten game for Rutgers to go on the road, to take on Ohio State. I think it's going to be a great opportunity to see what these two young kids can do. I think there's going to be a lot of must-watch games on the Rutgers schedule, more than there've been in a really long time for this program. But this is definitely one to circle if you're excited. If you're a Rutgers fan, a Big Ten fan, a college basketball fan, or an NBA draft fan, definitely want to watch this game. I think it's going to be a lot of excitement in that one.
Andy, I'm going to skip ahead to Michigan and Michigan State. We love, obviously you would expect those to be a partnership. Mm-hmm. And what I love is that we get both of their games, the game at Michigan and at Michigan State, in a span of 16 days at the very end of the schedule. So they play in Ann Arbor at Michigan on Friday. Again, I really love these Friday big games, man. On Friday, February 21st, that's the Friday after Valentine's Day. And then last day of the regular season at Michigan State on Sunday, March 9th. And Andy, I do see a world in which either or both of these teams are going to be right at the top in the mix there when we don't have, at least on paper, a dominant team like Purdue last year. And so will that be a game that's going to determine some things, particularly that last one on the last day of the regular season, that will determine seeding or maybe even, I don't know, a regular season champ? It could be a thing, Andy. We'll watch out for that.
That's what the Big Ten is absolutely hoping for, is that Sunday game between Michigan and Michigan State has a significant ramification on the standings in the conference, because that's going to be a huge game either way, but certainly if it has any kind of implication outside of just the rivalry for that matchup. But Isaac, that's going to wrap it up for us today here. Fantastic show. Always fun to talk scheduling once we finally get a look at these schedules, and excited, of course, for this Baylor Gonzaga game, which is coming up in about 6 weeks. So excited for basketball to be on the way back. Folks, we got more team previews coming your way this week. We got some fun guests lined up to get through some of those. We're also going to continue our conference preview series as well. So look out for that and more coming your way this week as we get into the end of September, the start of October, which is when we really start to feel like basketball season is here upon us. Folks, thank you so much for listening. As always, apologies to the Lawyer family. Talked about Purdue a little bit today. Let's go Wildcats. Not sure Northwestern's a big player in the Big Ten, but hey, you never know. And until Tuesday, peace out.